Page 122. Living things are made up of cells, and cells do not grow to be more than twice the size they were at first. But trees can grow to be many thousands of times the size they were as seeds. The tallest known tree is 364 feet high. One great tree in California is as much as 115 feet round its trunk at the thickest point. How does such growth take place if cells do not grow to be more than twice as large as they were at first? It all takes place through division. The cells which make up the organism are able to divide into two, and this division goes on and on. When you were born, you had as many as 200 billion cells in your body all coming. In 9 months, from the division of one cell, 175th of an inch across. Page 123. All organisms which you see in the world about you have grown by cell division. You and I have become what we are through billions of divisions in the cells, whose outcome is our cell structure at this minute. In cell division, the two halves of the cell, as you see in Picture 4, become ready to separate. In Picture 5, you see that they have separated. The cell in Picture 1, by division, has become two separate cells. The daughter cells do in every way the same as their mother cell did. One of the greatest questions scientists are working on is, what keeps the daughter cells doing what they have to do? Page 124. Even the simplest living organism is far more complex than any machines that people have made. Organisms are built up of parts which are themselves more complex than any machine. And these parts, in turn, are the most complex things the science of chemistry knows. It is because they are so complex that they can work together in an organism in so many different ways. Chemistry is about the different ways in which different materials are built up. For example, water is made up of oxygen and hydrogen united in a way which may be represented like this. Carbon dioxide is made up of carbon and oxygen in a way which may be represented like this. Chemists make use of the formula H2O for water in their writing. They use formulas to represent the structure of all material things. Page 125. The most important of the materials in our bodies are the proteins. Among them are materials with the most complex structures known to the chemist. We can get some idea of how complex proteins are by comparing the formula for one of them with the formula for water or for carbon dioxide. Compare this formula for a protein from milk with the simple formulas for water or carbon dioxide. The letter N in this formula represents nitrogen, and the letter S represents sulfur. Page 126. There may be as many as 100,000 different sorts of proteins in the human body, at work in as many different ways. It is a protein in our blood which takes up oxygen from the air we breathe into our lungs and carries it to the cells which need it. It is another protein which makes our bones strong, and another which makes our muscles able to pull on and move our bones. It is other proteins in our hair and skin and nails which make them what they are. Others again do very important work in the digestion of food, in controlling other changes in the body, in keeping it healthy, and in making children become so surprisingly like their parents. Page 127. How do these very complex materials come into being? The answer is through the work of plants. Plants need sunlight. This is common knowledge within the experience of most of us. But you can show how true it is if you make this little experiment. Grow 2 bean seeds over glasses of water, starting them in a dark cupboard. After a few days, take one glass out into the daylight and keep the other in the dark. Compare the two from time to time. you will find that it is the plant in the light which grows a strong stem and green leaves. Page 128. In 1772, the Englishman Joseph Priestley, the discoverer of oxygen, made a most important experiment. He knew from experience that air is necessary to plants and animals. He knew that if you put a live mouse, for example, under a glass so that no fresh air can come to it, the mouse in a short time will die. It will have taken all the oxygen out of the air, and without oxygen, it cannot go on living. Priestley put a green plant under a large glass cover, standing in water, so that no fresh air could get in. He thought that in a little while he would find the plant dead, like the mouse. Page 129. But no, here is what he said. When it had gone on growing there for some months, I found that the air would neither put out a candle, nor was it bad for a mouse which I put into it. In other words, the green plant had not used up all the oxygen in the air. The next step was taken when a Dutch scientist found that Priestley's experiment would not work without light. In the light, a plant gives out oxygen and builds up sugars and other complex materials in itself. In the dark, it gives out carbon dioxide and water. Page 130. The material which makes plants green is necessary if they are to use energy from light for healthy growth. Unlike animals, plants can take what they need straight from the air and earth and water in which they live. Through their green leaves and stems, they separate H from H2O and unite it with CO2 to make carbohydrates. Structure of part of a carbohydrate, a sugar. This power of plants is named photosynthesis. People and animals depend upon photosynthesis in plants to supply their food and energy. We and the animals either eat plants or eat plant-eating animals, or both. Page 131. When we think it out, we can see that most of the energy we use comes from the sun by way of the materials which plants build up in photosynthesis. Scientists know only a little so far about photosynthesis. It is only a little more than 100 years since the first account of it was given by the German scientist von Meyer. But with more experimenting being done every year, much more will certainly be known before very long. The rate at which scientific knowledge is increasing is going up all the time. In time, it may even be possible to use the energy of light itself in industry, to do in our factories something like what plants do in their green cells. Page 132. Before long, we may learn from working on photosynthesis how to make or grow more food. As we have seen, more than 1 billion people on this planet are short of food. As more and more people are born, the need for new food supplies will increase. It may be that we can find what we want in the sea. It is thought that as much as 90% of the photosynthesis which takes place in the world goes on in microscopic water plants in the sea. Maybe much of the food people are going to need in the future will come out of the oceans. Or making food straight from complexes of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen may become a great new industry. At present, we have to get most of the energy used in industry by burning coal and oil and other fuels. Page 133. This energy is the sun's energy stored up long ago by plants. Coal comes from the dead bodies of plants stored away from the air and under pressure through millions of years in great beds in the earth. The amount of coal and oil in the earth is, it is true, very great, but the amount we are using today is great too. A time may come before long when we will have used up all of the coal and oil that is easy to get at. We have been taking oil out of the earth only since about 1860. Without oil, there would be no cars and no airplanes. It is strange to think that airplanes depend on what plants were doing millions of years ago. Page 134. Plants and animals all need air. Only about 1/5 of the air is oxygen. The other 4/5 is another gas without taste, smell, or color named nitrogen. Both plants and animals need nitrogen as well as oxygen, but they cannot take it from the air themselves. How do they get their supply of nitrogen? There are very small organisms in soil and water which can take nitrogen out of the air and fix it in complex materials which plants and animals can use. These materials are taken up by plants through their roots in water from the soil. Animals get their nitrogen by eating plants. Some of this nitrogen comes away in animal waste, and people have for many thousands of years known enough to put animal waste back into the soil to help plants grow. Page 135. Nitrogen, like carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, is used over and over again in support of life. Plants build nitrogen up into complex structures. Animals eat the plants. Then animal waste and dead plants and fallen leaves are broken down into simpler forms again. So the great round goes on without end, all made possible only by energy coming from the sun. Scientists say that all the oxygen and all the carbon dioxide now in the air have been put there after use by plants through photosynthesis. Page 136. All organisms, it is clear, have a number of needs in common, of which air, water, food, and the sun's light and heat are the chief. But people have many other needs, though we may not think of them as needs. One of them, our need for other people, is very important. First of all, we need other people to do things for us when we are very young or very old, or when we are ill. We need others to take care of us. We need their help. We need them to do things for us which we cannot do for ourselves. We need their love. Page 137. Every hour of our lives, we do things that are possible only because of work, which is done for us by other people. Who grew the cotton? Who made the sheets? Who watched the sheep? Who washed the wool? Who made the blankets for the bed you sleep in? Whose work are you using when you turn on the light? Who mined the coal which gives the power to heat and light your room? But equally, men and women need to do things for other people. Most people are not happy if they are not in some way helping others, doing things for others. They need someone to love. Page 138. All our lives we need other people. In many parts of the world, families do everything for themselves. Until the 19th century, this was true almost everywhere outside the cities. Families were self-supporting. They grew the food they needed, built their own houses, and made their own clothing and furniture, the candles for lighting the rooms at night, and the plows and carts for work on the farm by day. In every way, they took care of themselves. Living like this, a family is very like a simple organism. Page 139. But a family living in a city today is more like a cell in a complex organism. Other people, whom it does not know, do almost everything for it. Workers in factories make the things it needs and send them to the stores, which sell them to it. Other people teach its children in schools and take care of them in hospitals when they are ill. Police and fire stations keep watch over the city. Lighting and water supplies, the clearing away of waste, the upkeep of streets and roads, are all public services. In exchange for all this, each of us does our own sort of work, our daily round, whatever it is. This is true for most of us, if not all. Page 140. People need play as well as work, though if your interest is deep enough, work and play can be the same thing. To some people, all their best work is a sort of play. They get so much pleasure from it and are so interested in it that they work when they don't need to. They are doing what they want most to do. It was the philosopher Plato who said, "All learning is best done as play." Nothing learned under pressure takes root rightly in the mind, so let children's work be a sort of play. Page 141. People need work and play for the body and for the mind. They need music and dancing, rest and change. They need books and talk with others, with old friends as well as with new people. They need new knowledge to keep their old knowledge clear in living. A friend is someone you know and love, and with whom you have much in common. People you know only a little are not your friends in this sense, though they may become your friends if you get to know them better. Page 142. People need to see beautiful things and to have beautiful things about them. Drawing goes back very far into our past. The drawings of animals copied on this page may have been made as early as 25,000 BC. Page 143. Drawing can help to make ideas easier. The pictures drawn in this book, for example. But the greatest drawing and painting and sculpture can make our highest powers come into play. The drawings below are of two pieces of sculpture, one from India and the other from Africa. Page 144. We need to hear beautiful things. Music may go back still farther in time than the other arts, but unhappily, we have no records of music before the discovery of writing. As with language, the writing of music may have started with pictures. Today, not only do we have ways of writing down music, but we can make copies of the sound of music as it is played. Page 145. We need to make beautiful things. Today, the great cities of the world have public art galleries and museums where anyone may see the paintings and drawings and sculpture of artists through the centuries. Page 146. Great cities have theaters where plays of the past and the present are acted. They have music buildings where great works of music are played. They have libraries where the best that has been thought and written can be found. Art and music and poetry come out of our greatest hours with ourselves and give others some of their greatest hours. Page 147. We need to be alone sometimes to get to know ourselves better, though we need to be with other people too, to get to know them better and ourselves through them. The more we know one another, the better able we will be to live together in the world. The nations on the earth, the Chinese, the Indians, the British, the Russians, the Germans, the Americans, the French, and the others, know very little about one another. They look in different directions and have different ideas of themselves and of the world. They live in different worlds. This is good only if they have bridges between their separate worlds and get to know enough about each other. Page 148. A little knowledge about other nations, too little knowledge, can make them seem bad. But we can't turn the clock back to yesterday when nations could keep to themselves and live without any knowledge of or help from other countries. The thing to do now is to get more knowledge about other peoples, and knowledge of other languages is necessary for this. We need many more people with a deep knowledge of other languages than their own. We have to know a language well if we are to know what people who use it mean and think. Page 149. In English, as in any other language, we do not always say what we mean or mean what we say. This is true of some of the things we say every day. For example, how do you do? How are you? This is what people say on meeting. Sometimes they stop and shake hands. How are you? Looks like a question. It is written with a question mark after it. And sometimes, how are you is a question. One person may want to know if another is well or ill, how their health is, and so on. Page 150. When these are questions, they are almost always said as if the person who says them means them as questions and wants an answer. But most of the time, they are said in a way which does not ask for any answer. When these words are said so, we do not answer, I am tired, or I have a bad cold, or I am not well. We say the same thing back to the other person. How are you? Or hello. Such words are like a smile or a wave of the hand. In the same way, when we meet someone in the morning, we may say, Good morning. The weather may be very bad, but we say good morning, and the other person will say, Good morning back to us. We are not talking about the weather or about how good or bad the morning is. Page 151. Again, when people are parting, they may say, Good morning, or Good afternoon, or Good evening, or Good night, to one another in place of goodbye. They are not talking about the weather, but saying, May all be well with you at this time. You will find few people today who know that goodbye is a short way of saying, God be with you. But in times past, when religion had more place than it now has in education, a child could be taught this very young, as part of a knowledge of English. Page 152. There was a teacher who tried to teach all this. Her students seemed to take in what she taught them. They said back to her all together, When you say good morning to us, we say good morning to you. Next morning, on her way to school, she saw one of them coming. She said to herself, Now I will see if he has learned that point about good morning. So she said to the young man, Good morning? Yes, it is. She had said good morning to him with a question in her mind. Will he say good morning? She had asked a question and he had answered it. The teacher said to herself, I must have seemed to be asking a question, so he gave me an answer. Next time I will do better. At that minute, she saw another student coming. She said to herself, Let me try again. Page 153. So she gave the young man a friendly smile and said, Good morning. Thank you very much. What was wrong then? The teacher asked herself. I must have said it as if I were giving him something. That was why he thanked me. Next time, I must keep that out of my voice. She saw a third student coming. This time she wanted the answer, Good morning, so much that her voice became hard and sharp. Good morning. Please. You see how little one person may know what is in another's mind, even when the other is trying to show him? Page 154. When people are from very different countries with very different ways, it can be hard for them to understand one another. Not very long ago, the number of people who knew anything about people in other countries was very small. Few people went far from home or took much interest in other countries. Today, all this has changed. Every day we hear more and more about other countries and about how bad their governments are. They hear about the strange and wrong ideas other countries have of them. If we knew them better, we would see that people everywhere are very much like ourselves, not very good or very bad, but in between, and able to become better or worse than they are. Our minds are as like one another as our bodies are. Page 155. We say, The Earth is getting smaller. It is the same size as it was, but we can go about it more and more easily. Many more people travel outside their own countries every year. We can get news today from any part of the world in a few seconds, though we may not always understand it. Many more ideas, right or wrong, about other countries are in people's minds. Most of this interest in other nations and places is good, if it goes deep enough. We need to know more. If we can keep our heads on our shoulders, the wider knowledge and experience which are coming will help the world to better days. Page 156. The Earth seems to be getting smaller because our experience is getting wider. All sorts of new ways of living and new ways of doing things have come to us in the last 50 years. Stranger things are coming. People can travel today through space to the moon, though only a very small number of them have done so. The price is too high for most countries to send even one person there for the present. What is space? That is hard to say. It is equally hard to say what time is. We and the sun and the moon and the stars are all in space and time, but no one understands what space and time are. Not even the best philosophers are clear about them. Page 157. These two men know that they have a space between them without being able to say what space is. There is not enough space in this car for all these travelers. They know that this is so, though they cannot say what space is. There is more free space on this page than on some other pages of the book which take longer to read. Page 158. It is equally hard to say what time is. This man has time on his hands. This other man has not enough time for his reading. The same amount of time may seem very short to one person and very long to another. A person's sense of time changes as their feelings change. Some days go by much more quickly than others. Some hours seem as if they would never end. Some are passed before they seem to have begun. Most people find that time goes by more quickly the older they get. Page 159. Our ideas about space and time are changing. Today we can fly round the world in 24 hours or less. The Earth turns round on itself in 24 hours. A person in an airplane flying west at 1,000 miles an hour would see the Earth turning. The sun would seem to be in the same place in the sky. The Earth would turn below the airplane. 200 years ago, scientists thought that the world was only about 6,000 years old. Now scientists say that it is nearer 6 billion years old, and that humans are at least 500,000 years old. But we have been able to fly only in the last 100 years. The invention of the airplane is an invention of the 20th century.